During the night, or more exactly in the early morning hours of the 20th or 21st of January of 2019, depending on the time zone, we will witness a fascinating event in all of Europe, North America, South America, as well as in Africa. A total lunar eclipse with a blood moon. In this video, you will find all important details on the so-called super blood moon of January 2019. In practical occult work and in magic, it is very important to understand and observe the effects of the moon. The understanding of these astrological and spiritual principles is taught in the Brotherhood of the Eternal Light within the training in Qabbalistic Astrology. What the occult spiritual meaning of the full moon, a lunar eclipse, and the blood moon is, and how the astrological constellation on the 20th or 21st of January of 2019 can be interpreted, we will explain to you in a moment. Brotherhood of the Eternal Light, teaching the Western mysteries. The moon is the visible sign of the Sephirah Yesod on the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. It is assigned to the astral plane, and Yesod means foundation, just as the astral plane is the foundation of the material plane. Thus the moon is the connection between Earth and the higher world, just as Yesod represents the connection of Malchut with Teferet and the higher Sephirot. Therefore the moon is essential for all kinds of practical magic. On Monday, the 21st of January 2019, or depending on the time zone earlier, on Sunday, January the 20th, we can observe a total lunar eclipse, which astrologically peaks in the exact opposition of Sun and Moon. The total eclipse starts at the US West Coast just after 8:41 p.m. It will be visible on the East Coast at around midnight, and in Europe and West Africa in the early morning hours of the 21st. The coming lunar eclipse will be an event in the sky that we can observe for quite a long time. The full moon will be completely in the conical core shadow or umbra of the Earth for more than 60 minutes. A lunar eclipse is only possible at full moon. A full moon occurs when the Sun, Earth and Moon are aligned on one axis in space. Astrologically, this is called an opposition of Sun and Moon. Seen from the Earth, we can see the Moon completely illuminated by the Sun in the night sky. At a lunar eclipse, the Moon moves into the shadow of the Earth. Sometimes the eclipse is only partial, when the Moon only partially crosses the shadow. Sometimes the Moon crosses the core shadow of the Earth in its entirety, which results in a total lunar eclipse. However, a lunar eclipse does not occur every full moon, because the elliptic lunar orbit is slightly displaced from the ecliptic, the apparent orbit of the Sun around the Earth. The lunar orbit cuts the ecliptic plane at 2 points. These intersections are called lunar nodes. When the moon is located at one of these two intersection points, a lunar eclipse occurs. That is the reason why the lunar nodes were formerly referred to as dragon points or dragon head and dragon tail, because in former times the belief prevailed that the sun or the moon would be devoured by a dragon during an eclipse. On the 20th or 21st of January 2019, the moon moves through the ascending lunar node, the North Node. Moon and North Node thus form a conjunction. Concurrently, this means that the descending lunar node or South Node is in conjunction with the Sun at this point. If you want to learn more about the mythology and the astrological significance, as well as the spiritual background of the lunar nodes, watch our video. Once published, a link can be found in the description. During a total lunar eclipse, the moon appears reddish, so we can see the so-called blood moon. The Earth atmosphere scatters primarily long-wave red sunlight into the area of the core shadow of the Earth, so that the moon can be observed glowing in a slightly reddish colour. Let us now look at the spiritual and occult factors of this special event and the astrological constellation of the 20th or 21st of January 2019. Let's start with the astrological significance of the full moon. As already explained, Sun and Moon are in opposition whenever there is a full moon. The Sun will be in Aquarius at 0 degrees and 52 arc minutes, and the Moon will be in Leo at 0 degrees and 52 arc minutes. This is the moment of the exact opposition, which we will interpret now. Let us first explain what an opposition is. In an opposition, there is strong tension between the planets. The basic forces, or the planets, and the theme, or the ideal, that is the signs that colour the planets, are in polarity towards each other. What does an opposition of Sun and Moon mean? In an opposition between Sun and Moon, the Sun, Tiferet, projects its light with full power onto the Moon, Yesod, while Earth is between this field of tension. Consequently, this point in time is seen as a moment of intense astral influences, which can show in very receptive and suggestible people. The effect can be even stronger when someone has a similar constellation in their own birth chart. When both Sun and Moon form an opposition with the lunar node's axis, a special astronomical event occurs, namely a lunar eclipse. What does this mean in astrological terms? On the 20th or the 21st of January, the Moon will be in conjunction with the ascending lunar node, and the Sun will be in conjunction with the descending lunar node. Sensitivity and that which a human is receptive for, Moon, is connected, conjunction, with that which shall manifest more and shall grow, ascending lunar node. And both these things show in their self-expression and self-actualization. The individuality, Sun, is closely connected, conjunction, with what we shall let go of, and what should become less, descending lunar node, and both of these things show in the area of transpersonal freedom, Aquarius. In the Radix chart, you can see how the Sun and the descending lunar node are in conjunction in Aquarius, respectively Capricorn, and how they form an opposition with the Moon in conjunction with the ascending lunar node in Leo, respectively Cancer. So there is tension, opposition, between the development of the base character, Sun, together with that which we should let go, descending lunar node, and that which moves us on a deep level, Moon, together with that which should grow, ascending lunar node, on the other hand. The theme of the conjunction of Sun and descending lunar node is about transpersonal topics, Aquarius, and ambition or striving, Capricorn, and is in strong polarity, opposition, with the quality of the opposition of the Moon and the ascending lunar node, which is the expression of personality, Leo, and caring sensitivity, Cancer. Let us have a closer look. There is a conflict between that which we, concerning our basic character, Sun, should become more independent of, descending lunar node, and that which moves us deeply, Moon, and which should become more manifest, ascending lunar node. Interestingly, the Sun, which would be in its dominion in Leo, is in opposition to this sign, which means in exile, and thus the Sun's power is weakened. This indicates that the problem of Aquarius might manifest, which is to become distant and impersonal, Sun in exile in Aquarius, which might mean that we want to withdraw from a certain development. At the same time, the descending lunar node, which is in conjunction with the Sun, has a strengthening influence on the task to become more independent of individual qualities, Sun conjunction descending lunar node in Capricorn. And that influence comes with an ambitious quality, Capricorn. These could, for example, be qualities that are connected to the problems of the Sun, which is in exile in Aquarius, where the more problematic qualities of the sun may become more prevalent. These are, for example, pride, arrogance, egotism, and a know-it-all manner. Additionally, the descending lunar node is in conjunction with Mercury, and Mercury is in conjunction with Pluto. Which additional basic forces and qualities are therefore connected with the aforementioned lunar node axis? Through the conjunction with Mercury, the theme of mental clarity is addressed. This quality, in combination, Mercury conjunction lunar node, with ambition, both in Capricorn, and uncompromising ambitious striving towards the best, Pluto also in conjunction, also in Capricorn, can help us to become aware of our weaknesses and problematic aspects of our personality. Sun in Aquarius in exile, and to let go of them, conjunction descending lunar node. The position of the moon is also quite interesting, since the moon receives some of the quality of Cancer, because of its conjunction with the ascending lunar node in Cancer, which strengthens the moon in its receptive quality. This is because in Cancer, the moon has its dominion and thus has a good and strong position there. Another energetic aspect, but one with friction, square, comes from the position of Uranus. The ability to change, Uranus, is impulsive, Aries. This transformative power, Uranus, which wants to express itself immediately, Aries, has great potential and strong energy, square Sun and Moon, which can help to allow the changes of the aforementioned opposition of the Sun and Moon on the lunar nodes. It can help to directly act upon, Aries, impulses for change, Uranus. For Uranus also shows us in what way we deal with impulses for further development. Additionally, both Sun and Moon receive strengthening influences. Sun sextile Chiron, as well as Moon trine Chiron, through a healing potential Chiron of selfless devotion Pisces, which we can use to receive the impulse for development. Uranus in Aries is in a square to both the Sun and Moon on the lunar nodes, the aforementioned opposition axis, and self-discovery, lunar node axis in conjunction with Sun in Aquarius and Moon in Leo. The quality of the time at the point of the lunar eclipse has a special potential for our personal development. We can use the strong impulse for development and the striving for free change, square Uranus in Aries, in form of a supportive meditative turn inwards, trine and sextile Pisces. So, it makes sense to use the time of the lunar eclipse for meditation, followed by dream work. For this purpose, we will offer you a guided meditation, which we will publish here on our YouTube channel in 1 week from now. This meditation can help you with your spiritual and personal development. You are welcome to use it. Also, it will cover all astrological potentials in order to optimally support you during the time around the lunar eclipse and beyond. The meaning of the total lunar eclipse and the blood moon. In antiquity, the blood moon was considered demonic. In ancient Mesopotamia, for example, people thought that during a total lunar eclipse, the moon was attacked by 7 demons. In Qabbalistic Astrology, the sunlight represents the influence of the higher forces and the forces of consciousness, Tiferet. The moon, Yesod, is the facilitator between the higher forces and the lower earthly forces, Malchut. When the full moon is located in the Earth's shadow, there is a total lunar eclipse and a blood moon, and the connection to higher consciousness is interrupted. The light of the sun, Tiferet, is blocked by Earth, the material world, Malchut. So this is a time where the imbalanced aspects of the lower self can express themselves to a greater degree without conscious control of the mind. The lower and more compulsive forces can become prominent because at that moment the connection to the higher is interrupted. From an occult point of view, the opposite of a lunar eclipse is a solar eclipse. During a solar eclipse, the light reaches Yesod, but not Malchut. Therefore, the solar eclipse is more of a spiritual celestial event, because the connection to the higher is emphasized. However, both eclipses are not an ideal time for magical work such as ritual, healing rites, or consecration. A solar eclipse often occurs closely before a lunar eclipse. In the case of the blood moon on January the 20th or 21st, a partial solar eclipse happens 2 weeks before on January the 5th or 6th. The solar eclipse, emphasizing the higher spiritual influences, is so to speak a preparatory event for the lunar eclipse. In the Bible, both celestial events are described and interpreted. "And I will shew wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the great and terrible day of the Lord come." What kind of spiritual work can and should be done at all during the time of the blood moon? It is recommended to avoid important rituals. We should, however, also consider that the interpretation of astrological signs can be compared with a weather forecast, and just as with a weather forecast, there is no reason to panic. When we know that it is going to rain, it doesn't mean that our hiking tour must be cancelled or that it will be bad. We can adapt to the weather and use weatherproof clothing, umbrellas, etc. An example from practical magical work could be a healing ritual. Because a loved person became ill, in this urgent case it would make no sense to postpone the ritual for another week. With the right inner power, intention and knowledge, such a ritual can of course also be done successfully during a blood moon. However, when a practical magical task can wait, it should be done at a later point. Instead of doing ritual work, it makes sense to meditate intensely about ethics. Also, meditations and contemplations about our own shadow and how to transform it are good options during this time. Meditative experiences during this time may sometimes not be easy to take, since we do not experience our good sides as much during this time, but rather the hidden parts of our soul. A few days before the total lunar eclipse, we will upload a guided meditation onto this channel, which you can use. With our meditation, you can use the spiritual power and the quality of the time safely and optimally, and you can get to know the astrological forces and experience them directly. You can already look forward to this inner journey, which will offer you valuable spiritual experiences and insights. The time of a total lunar eclipse can be a time of inner repentance and cleansing of the soul. In antiquity, it was a time of fear. Nowadays, it is rather a time of awe, self-criticism, and self-knowledge. The spiritual quality of a lunar eclipse is reminiscent of the position of Lilith in the horoscope. Lilith stands for the klipot or the klipotic, that is, imbalanced and chaotic forces within us. The time of a lunar eclipse and a blood moon is possibly also an opportunity to be shocked by one's inner demons in order to avert from them. It can also be a time where we meet the guardian of the threshold who confronts us with our own unresolved karma. Write us in the comments what you find or found most interesting about this blood moon. We're also curious to learn about your experiences and expectations of the lunar eclipse. We appreciate your support. If you enjoyed our video, click the like button, and if you haven't already done so, click on the subscribe button. Make sure to activate the bell so that you'll be notified as soon as our guided meditation is available. Thank you, and see you in the next video.